meeting of the Ames City Council for April 14th, 2020 to order. And in that, it's impractical to hold an in-person Ames City Council meeting due to the Governor of Iowa declaring a public health emergency occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. And the governor has placed limits on the size of public gatherings that may be held. Therefore, this meeting is being held electronically as allowed by Section 21.8 of the Iowa Code. Anyone who may be watching online also who desires to provide input on any item, they may do so as a video participant by going to https://zoom.us/j/8265-93023, or you can go to the cityofames.org website, go underneath government, mayor and city council, and then to city council meetings. Once on that page, click on the April 14, 2020 agenda, and you can utilize the hot link on top of the agenda to access the Zoom meeting. Just some information as well, if you want to participate during the meeting, members of the public who are on Zoom will be placed on mute. If a member of the public wishes to speak regarding an item, they should use the raise hand feature. This can be activated using the menu option for video users or by phone by pressing *9, and I'll give that phone number in 1 minute. Participants will be unmuted one at a time to provide their comments, and their name or last 3 digits of their phone number will be announced to indicate it is their turn to speak. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name and address for the record before beginning your comments, and your comments should be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Once your statement has concluded, your microphone will be muted again. If you prefer to call in, the phone number to call in is 1-312-626-6799, and the Zoom meeting ID number is 826-593-023. And again, if you wish to raise your hand by phone, press *9. The meeting also may be viewed live on Ames Channel 12 YouTube, on youtube.com/AmesChannel12, on the www.cityofames.org/channel12 link, or on Mediacom Channel 12. Council, tonight we are going to be working with an amended agenda. There are 2 segments. First of all, we've added a proclamation at the beginning of the meeting. And secondly, under consent on item 17, items A and B have been added. And item 27, we have added item A under that item. So I'm going to begin with this evening reading a proclamation for Arbor Day, which is April 24th. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the wind erosion of our topsoil, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide a habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are renewable resources that increase property values, enhance the equality of the business area, and beautify our community. Therefore, I, John A. Hala, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 24th, 2020, Arbor Day in Ames. I encourage residents to plant a tree mulch existing trees, and protect our trees and woodlands by becoming good stewards of the land. Okay, we'll move on now to consent agenda. And council, does anyone wish to pull any item from consent tonight?
Mayor, I need to pull items 8 and 18 because of conflicts of interest.
8 and 18, all right. Anything else? All right, hearing none, entertain a motion approving consent less items 8 and 18.
Move consent minus 8 and 18.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Reedy Hansen.
Aye.
Okay. Entertain a motion on approval of resolution approving appointment of Chad Schneider to the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
This is
Move
Brown.
approval.
Second.
Who moved? Who moved? Amber?
Amber.
This
And
is
Ron,
Brown.
seconded. Okay.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Garten,
Abstain. Conflict.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Reedy Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion approving resolution 28th, 2020 as the date of public hearing regarding partially vacating the remote parking easement for 901 North 4th Street.
This is Bronwyn. So moved.
Thank you, Bronwyn.
Second. This is Gloria.
Thank you, Gloria. Roll call, please.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Reedy Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten.
Abstain. Conflict.
Thank you. All right, moving on to public forum. This is a time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. And Brian and or Susan, do we have anybody who is either on video or on the phone that would like to address council?
Yes,
or
Mayor.
anything?
I see one person on the phone whose phone number ends in 148 who would like to speak, and I'll unmute them right now.
Okay, and please introduce yourself, your name and your address, and you may begin.
I'm Merlin Fonkuka, 1424 Kellogg. I didn't realize, Mayor Haler, you were in training to become an announcer, but thank you for reading all of the introductory material because my internet provider is down and the only way I can participate is by calling in. Okay, I again want to talk about sidewalks on 14th and 15th Streets. I tried to look at the big picture. Sidewalks were added late, way too late. This resurfacing project was in the capital improvements plan the last 4 years. The public works didn't start talking with the neighborhood about sidewalks until Thanksgiving. This has meant that everything involving sidewalks has been rushed, way too rushed. I think my earlier recommendation before the coronavirus that either this project be delayed a year or sidewalks removed is still a good idea. This haste has been exacerbated by the casual approach of the council to these sidewalks. I've watched the video of the February 25th council meeting again several times. I'm shocked at the casualness of council. Please watch the video. How can us neighbors hope to overcome this at the last minute before you approve the contract May 12th? Gloria pulls this item from the consent agenda. She says having staff call us neighbors barely an hour before the meeting is sufficient. Really, Gloria? You've been on the council for more than 6 years now, and surely you know how divisive mandating sidewalks is. Gloria says the council has mandated sidewalks on both sides of the street. Really, Gloria? When? Could Steve clarify for us exactly what the city policy is here? The complete streets plan should be looked at for guidance. It calls for each project to be examined holistically for a variety of reasons. Connectivity is one of the factors. Another is the effect on the neighborhood. In the council discussion, we learned that Amber, Bronwyn, and Gloria went on a walking tour of neighborhoods north of downtown with a wheelchair. They couldn't go between Douglas and Burnett on 15 on a sidewalk with the wheelchair. Well, there are no sidewalks. Walking on the street, which has been done safely for probably 80 years, wasn't considered. And neither was how sidewalks would affect the neighborhood. Where did this alarming predisposition to approve sidewalks come from? Steve says you have to go back at least to the 1990s to find where a sidewalk has been imposed on an unwilling neighborhood. I asked you to tour our neighborhood with me at the meeting and again shortly thereafter in an email. So far, only Gloria, Mayor Hala, and Steve have done so. What about the rest of you? I fear you see no need for a tour because you already know how you are going to vote. Please give us neighbors a fair shake. Don't you understand how important this is to us? We think a sidewalk will scar our neighborhood with only an illusory community benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Merlin. Is there anybody else, Brian or Susan, that would be either on the phone or video that wants to address council under public forum? And we'll give it here just a couple of seconds to see if anyone else is, becomes available.
I do not see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public forum and we'll move on to item number 37, resolution approving preliminary plat for Wheelock Corners subdivision located at 1499 South Dayton Avenue. Is there anybody from staff that will be making a presentation this evening?
Kelly and Julie are here.
Julie, hit the volume.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So tonight I will be presenting the preliminary plat for 1499 South Dayton Place. It's approximately 16 acres, 16.4 acres in size. The south boundary is Southeast 16th Street. The east boundary is South Dayton Avenue. This has several layers of zoning. The base zoning district is HOC, Highway Oriented Commercial. And you can just kind of see this blue dash line that wraps the site on the north and west. That is our Southeast Gateway Overlay Zoning District. And then it is located in the floodway, and it has the environmental overlay on it as well.
Julie,
yes.
Julie, can you share your screen, or are you trying to describe what's...
I thought I did share it. It says I did.
Okay. It's not showing up. Sorry to interrupt you, but...
No, that's fine. I thought I did.
We're all learning this process here.
Julie, it should be at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, I thought I clicked that. Maybe I didn't click hard enough on it because...
It's green.
Okay.
There we go.
There you go. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
Now back up to the slide with the blue outline.
Yeah.
You're talking about.
So
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, you can see this blue dash line that wraps the north and west boundary of the site. And then it also includes this area that's already developed to the east and south as well. And then here you can see this is the floodplain, or excuse me, the environmental overlay boundary line as well. Plat is proposes six lots. They range in size from about 0.75 to a little over 4 acres. The Isaac Newton Drive will be a new street that goes through the site that connects from South Dayton Avenue to Southeast 16th Street. Access will be prohibited to all of the lots from South Dayton and Southeast 16th Street. This dash line over here is shown, and that's the extent of that environmental overlay boundary. If you're wondering boundary, that's why that is shown. And then you want to point out this small parcel down here on the Southeast 16th Street right away. That is owned by the county, and it will continue to be owned by the county and not part of this plat. That was purchased as part of a floodplain buyout program, and that has the conditions that it's never developed, it's never sold, so it has to stay that size and owned by the county. But it will be landscaped and maintained as part of this development, so it should blend in nicely as it develops, and it'll be treated as front yard for this development. Water and sewer will all run through along the new South Isaac Newton Drive through the site, and all the lots will take their access from water and sewer off of that right of way. There are, trying to see the best one to see, sidewalks are proposed on 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of Isaac Newton Drive. There will be a sidewalk installed along South Dayton Avenue as well. If you see this drive on the north side of Isaac Newton Drive already exists. It's a private drive into that Tyson's development. It will remain as is, and it will be part of Lot 1. But the sidewalk is going to cross because of the way it comes into Isaac Newton Drive and that intersection with Dayton Avenue. That's why the sidewalk crossing is proposed in the location that it is. There will be some improvements to this intersection, the Southeast 16th and South Dayton Avenue one. It's not part of this project, but this project does take into account those improvements that will happen in the future. Some things to point out about this site are the entire site is located in the floodplain. This is the floodplain map, so you can, our zoning layers, so you can see the floodplain is on this western side. It's about the western half of lots 2 and 3 of the preliminary plat, and then the remaining site stays in the floodplain fringe. So development can occur in that fringe with floodplain development permits, which is part of any future development that occurs at the site plan phase, and it also with grading at the plat phase as well. They're part of this lot is located in that environmental overlay district, and so an environmental assessment is required for the site. I believe this is the first project that is being developed that has that overlay on it. So the purpose of the environmental assessment is to show that the project will protect designated natural resource areas and do an inventory and mitigate any negative effects on the floodway or negative effects on the development as a result of locating improvements in this area. So that report was done, and it was included as an attachment with your staff report. I've included some exhibits of there. So the study area was slightly larger than the preliminary plat. This red line that cuts through the site north and south is where the west boundary of the preliminary plat will be located. So you can see most of the wetlands are located off-site. There's a small area of these blue lines are existing wetlands area, and then that green area is an oak forested area that exists. Oops. So here's one that shows wetland development. To the east, those yellow areas, that's not considered wetlands that need to be protected. Those are just wet areas that existed when they went out to do the study as a result of the grade of the site after a heavy rainfall. So those aren't ones that need to be protected or mitigated. Just these small blue lines on the east side are those wetlands. And then this again shows the floodplain area and the flood fringe and flood area. During the planning and commission meeting, there were some questions about the environmental assessment and particularly the oak woodland area and how it could be protected to make sure those trees are safe and not damaged during grading. If you look closely at the grading plan, no grading will exist in the drip line of those trees. They've moved those grading lines out so that it does not affect the trees. One way to further protect the trees and so they're not removed is through a conservation easement, and so staff has included that as part of their recommendation to include that easement just for an added layer of protection so that those trees remain as is. So staff's recommendation is for approval, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Julie, before you go any further, and don't change your screen, can you talk about the body of water which is west of Tyson's building, right above the property?
Yes. So that's just a detention pond that exists in the area. So some of the site will drain north to that detention pond, but a majority of it will drain west to a new detention pond that will be graded over here in this area, and just south of the oak forested area.
So that pond is not sized adequately to handle the developed area that's under consideration. They have to provide additional on-site stormwater detention. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Julie, I have questions on the bike trail. One of the nicest bike trails in Ames is the part that goes along South 16th there. And my understanding is that there are plans, a capital improvement plan for a bike trail on Dayton, along, I think would be on this west side of Dayton. What is your understanding about bike trails? It would be nice if they would be the same size as what you have on South 16th.
Yeah, so the one does exist on South 16th already. And then this proposal is a 5-foot sidewalk along Dayton Drive on this side of Dayton.
Could you clarify what is the size on South 16th? Isn't that 8 feet?
Yeah, this is on the south side of Dayton, the existing one, or excuse me, on Southeast 16th Street. It is existing shared use 8-foot path. This proposed new sidewalk with this development is only 5 foot on this side of Dayton. So
I would find it desirable to have consistency in the width. Why wouldn't we maintain the 8 foot along Dayton?
Hey, Tim, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you now.
Okay. I think that the shared use pass system is routed on the east side of South Dayton. So it says at Dayton, it's the shared use path on the east side. And currently we don't have requirements to have shared use paths on both sides of arterial streets. So the default was to the 5-foot sidewalk on the west side of Dayton and keep the shared use path on the east side.
Do you know what the time frame is for installing that?
The 5-foot sidewalk?
No, the bike trail, the shared use trail on the east side of Dayton.
But part of it will go in with that hotel, and I would have to look into what the deferral language is to the north of the hotel. My guess is it's been deferred because that lot's not yet developed. We used to allow for deferrals without a 3-year requirement to complete them. So many of these older subdivisions can have gaps for a long time. We'd have to probably look into that and respond outside of the meeting.
And I'm fine. I appreciate your explanation. As long as I thought it was the bike multi-use trail was going to be on the west side of Dayton. I didn't realize it's on the east side. So thanks for clarifying that. I think that resolves my concern.
Okay.
Other questions or comments, council?
Julie, I have a question. The environmental assessment mentions an old stream channel that's, I guess, attached to part of the non-forested wetlands. Can you show that on one of these plans?
The old stream channel?
Yeah, it says non-forested wetlands within the investigation area are generally consist of closed depressions within an old stream channel. The channel no longer conveys water, but does provide a catchment for rainwater and a flood basin during high flow events. And I'm just not sure where that channel is.
It's kind of those blue lines.
I would guess the blue lines, which are called out as wetlands. There's not a specific exhibit that points out to an old stream channel separate from those.
Yeah, that's what confused me, because it said it's non-forested wetland, and those blue lines seem to be in the woods. So I don't know. If you don't know where it is, that's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Other questions or comments for staff on this?
I do have a question about drainage in a construction project like this. Council received a number of inquiries from residents about the drainage properties that are relevant when building in the floodplain. So I know that we have the requirement to build 3 feet above the base flood elevation, for example. But are there other measures that are applied to development in the floodplain that are different than the ordinary sort of stormwater mitigation that we would require in any development disturbing this amount of land?
No, you mean look beyond the floodplain ordinance that we have today?
I guess if we're just visualizing development outside the floodplain, it has its stormwater requirements. Mm-hmm. So if you take that development and now it's happening inside the floodplain, do those ordinary stormwater requirements change beyond the sort of the 3-foot level and the need for an additional flood permit? Or does it all really depend on when the development happens? Then we will look at it more closely and see if there are additional things that must be done because it's in the floodplain.
David, if I could respond to that. So the hierarchy of our general stormwater management ordinance, which is chapter 5B,
yes,
it applies the same whether it's in the floodplain or outside of the floodplain. The only regulations that are different in the floodplain are the protection measures of property, essentially buildings, that they have to be raised above the base flood elevation. And then we have specific permits, obviously, about disturbances in the floodplains, and you can't add fill to the floodway itself and change the base flood elevation within. So the stormwater standards of 5B are really independent of the floodplain protection standards.
And so is it fair to say then that the stormwater requirements are intended to compensate for the disturbance of the land in order to ensure that the land, once developed, doesn't have worse drainage properties than it did before?
Yes, yeah. So it's trying to accomplish a couple of different things in general everywhere in the city. One is to manage the runoff in a controlled manner, and also detain any extra flows that are caused by your development. That's what we mostly are thinking about. And one of the other tertiary components is this natural resources inventory, where we are trying to protect streams with buffers and ensure that habitat is protected to the extent practicable. Here we have that extra overlay because of the floodway. But that's also kind of above and beyond even with the stormwater service water.
Okay, I think that covers it for me. Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, we'll open up public input. Brian, do we have anyone who has expressed interest in offering public input on this item this evening? As Councilman Martin indicated, council received several emails. I'm sure everyone has read through, expressing some input.
Mayor, this is Brian. I don't see anyone with their hand raised. Oh, hang on one moment. We do have one person, Justin Dodge,
Okay.
and his microphone's unmuted.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Appreciate everybody.
Just introduce yourself and your address, please, and then go ahead and proceed in your comments.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, very good.
Okay, I started in on the address, so Justin Dodge, Hunsaker Companies, 105 South 16th Street. Just here to answer any questions that you guys might have about this project. As far as the staff recommendation for the easement, if that's what we need beyond amending our grading plan, which we've done, we can certainly do so to protect those trees.
Justin, one question on my part. I don't mean to focus so much on the bike trails, but this is sort of a special trail just because there are very few cutouts along this stretch on South 16th. Are you pretty confident that the construction can take place to allow enough visibility so that cyclists will have a clearer vision on oncoming cars along the new road there?
You know, as far as visibility and how it was designed, the engineers took care of that. So I'm not sure what else to tell you besides, you know, it met whatever standards the city has for Isaac Newton. As far as construction and visibility, so this project also dovetails in with the city's project of working on South Dayton Avenue, where they're adding in a turn lane. And so they've visited with us about holding off on doing our sidewalk on the west side of Dayton until they get that turn lane installed. And then we would install that sidewalk, and that's fine with us. We're happy to work with the city in that regard.
Okay.
Anything else, Justin, you wish to share?
Like I said, just here to answer any questions anybody might have.
Okay. Any questions for Justin? Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Brian?
No, Mayor, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay. We'll go ahead and close public input. Further discussion from council, otherwise entertain a motion on the resolution. Hearing no discussion, entertain a motion on resolution.
This is Bronwyn. I would move alternative 1.
Thank you. Is there a second? Martin seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Moriarty,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Vitti Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on, thank you, Julie and Kelly. Moving on to item 38, resolution awarding contract with United Public Safety of Fort Worthington, Pennsylvania for parking enforcement hardware and software. Council, do you have any questions for staff on this particular item this evening?
I do have a question, and that is, given that this is a crucially cloud-based system, what happens if the provider just vanishes and goes bankrupt? Is this something that we can, I mean, it doesn't matter if it takes us a few days, but we'll be able to just reinstitute some local system in order to deal with the problem, won't we? Does that sound right?
Chief Psychologist is here. Maybe you can answer that question.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The database is redundant, backed up. Guess in a worst case, and they have a disaster recovery plan that we've examined. We look at make our best assessment of the business stability of the contractor before bringing forward a contract. I think there's always some fear about a contractor just vanishing on us, and I don't want to paint too rosy a picture of that. We aren't providing an offline storage of the data ourselves in this model, so I think there may be some vulnerability if the contractor just vanishes. We tried to safeguard against that, but with a cloud-based system, as you point out, I think that's always a concern.
And a somewhat separate question. The report mentioned, I think, graduated payments. I take it this would be sufficient to allow you to institute a warning on the first time type ticket for appropriate occasions if we decide to do it that way. Is that correct?
That's correct. A real-time link to the parking database allows graduated fine structure, allows a warning, 2 warnings, 3 warnings, allows a check, brings much more versatility to the ordinance approach that council could take to parking. So yes, we're excited to bring that option to the operation.
And finally, do you have an idea of what percentage of the tickets paid are actually presently paid online?
We do. As I recall, the estimate was somewhere above 40%. As you know from reading this, there is an online surcharge proposed by this vendor. In fact, that appears to be a common approach in the industry these days. All of our vendors had this model as part of their proposal. I think in respect to the local concerns for that, there still is the opportunity for people to pay their ticket at the drop box or drop it in the mail and avoid that surcharge. We were, of course, looking for that. The vendor is pretty optimistic about the online utilization. They believe that there will be a real appetite for that from our customers. We were, pardon me, frankly, a little more skeptical, but they're the ones with the business at risk in this.
Thank you, Chief.
Chuck, do we know anything about the susceptibility of this particular system to the sort of hacks that we've had with the current parking system?
Yes, good question. Naturally, we were very concerned about that when we looked at these vendors. And we had our IT staff reviewing the security of the model they propose. This company has a system, a management platform that's hosted through the Microsoft Azure Government Cloud, which in our research meets all of the contemporary standards. If you're a student of this, the one that seems to really apply to them is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard 3.2.1, and they meet it. And I have the certificate in front of me. We were really concerned about this after the experience that some of our customers had in past years. And so we gave them a lot of scrutiny, and in fact, we're on the telephone with them today, just confirming that they continue to have a secure platform and they're to date, today, there still has never been a data breach on their platform.
Chief, is there any option for people to avoid paying that service or convenience fee?
Absolutely. They can put their payment in the mail. They can walk it into City Hall. They can drop it in the Dropbox. So it's very easy to avoid that convenience fee. Several payment options accessible to them just as they are now. So it's only applied if people choose to use the online platform.
And if someone's choosing to use that platform online, will they be notified that there's an option to avoid that by paying in person?
I don't know. I think so. I mean, to the extent that we control the language, we will note that and provide that information. We certainly will have it on the violation. If we print the tickets, we always provide that notice for local payment.
Chuck, the spread on these bids is enormous, and I have no frame of reference as far as what one would expect, but the United Public Safety at $38.88 per year for first year cost compared to $112,000 for T2, and the others are fairly much larger as well. You mentioned this a little bit in the staff report, but are we confident that they really know what they're bidding on, given the disparity with the other bidders?
We are confident. We looked at that quite closely. If you look at Cardinal and T2, they're industry leaders. They run parking systems in major metropolitan areas, hundreds or thousands of units on their system, thousands and thousands of citations processed every day. They're very large scale operators and really not a very good fit for us. Very costly for them to scale down to our size of operation. In the parking world, our business is very simple. Our penalties are few, and the money flowing through our system is pretty limited. And so we end up being a much better fit for the smaller companies. We'd love to have the options that Cardinal and T2 offer, but frankly, we wouldn't use most of them given the scale of our operation. That accounts for a great deal of that disparity.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, open up public comment on this item. Ryan, is there anybody who wishes to address council on this particular topic?
Mayor, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay. We will close public input, and I will entertain a motion on resolution awarding contract to United Public Safety of Fort Washington, Pennsylvania for parking enforcement hardware and software.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? It's moved by Garten and Betcher seconded. All right, roll call, please.
Martin.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 39, giving direction to staff regarding future city council workshops. Mr. Shanker?
Steve, you're muted.
You recall you asked the staff to put together a list of, thank you, of workshops for the rest of the year. The major use of the workshops will be for the Ames 2040 plan, but we had a few others. The arts workshop we had planned, and then the meeting with the neighbors on 321 State. So we tried to plan this out for the rest of the calendar year, and whether or not we'll be doing this over Zoom or we'll be able to get together in the future will have a lot to do with if we proceed with some of the more important public input sessions on the Ames 2040. So if Kelly's there to answer any questions for you, he tried to lay that out for you. I want you to know when, Kelly, are you on? I didn't see you on as a participant.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can. So you might want to go through those. We try to put them mostly on workshops, had to put a few of his discussions on regular meetings, and you should know when we're talking about public input along the way. The first couple or three will be just working with the consultants and the staff to get your feedback as we start to put together the draft plan that will be taken out over a couple of months to the public. So I don't know if you have any questions for Kelly to go over those dates with you, or what we'll try to accomplish in each one of those meetings. But we're here to talk about it if you like.
Kelly, one of the questions that we were talking this afternoon was, there has been a little bit of hesitation on some council members' part regarding being able to do a good job of discussing, reviewing materials ahead of time, and then having some major decisions to make in a somewhat unnatural format. Can you just kind of walk us through a little bit how you see distributing materials? You say it's going to be distributed to the council on Friday the 17th. Will there be advanced information on all these? And just kind of comment on that if you would, please. Because I know the council is very interested in continuing on with the process, but you'll make sure that we have all the information and a good dialogue.
Yeah, I can do that. It's Brian or Susan, could you let me share screen so I can put up the schedule that the council has?
Okay, you should have the ability now, Kelly.
Does it show?
Yep, very good, Kelly. Got it.
All right, so the schedule that you received, I think this week is a little bit different than the others because you're making a decision tonight about whether you're going to have a meeting next week. So the materials for next week, we tried to keep it narrow as the first time you possibly were going to hold a Zoom workshop. What we wanted to give you was the full city map. We had introduced the idea in February, but we had not done the whole city. So we wanted to bring that back to you and obviously give you time to look at that, not just present it to you. So in this case, you would only get a few days before the meeting, but we're also not asking you to make decisions next Tuesday. We're asking for you to ask us questions. And then in this case, look at on your regular meeting on the 28th, give us more directions. You've had more than a few days to look at it. You've had almost a week and a half to look at that. The other workshops, we want to give you information much further in advance. Our goal would be to give it to you about a week in advance so that you have time to look at it. If you have more questions in advance, then we could be prepared for that. In talking with RDG about kind of their experience with this, they've obviously used Zoom quite a bit as their company. They have a lot of remote locations. They feel that long Zoom meetings do not work well. So the topics probably need to be a little more focused and not think that we're going to run through a 3-hour Zoom meeting on some in-depth topic. So they're comfortable with the idea that we would plan here for 3 workshops. Some of these could be more information than others, but try to give that to you at least a week in advance. And then you can sort out how you want to proceed after a workshop about planning for other regular meetings to discuss or give direction after the workshop. Later on in the schedule, now we're trying to use our crystal ball a little bit here and assume that some semblance of normal can happen later in the summer. You'll notice that we have July 28th penciled in here as if we complete all of the workshops outlined here, council is satisfied with their initial level of participation, that by July 28th, we can return to show you the final draft. And if you're comfortable with that, then we can plan for community outreach and community engagement in August and September and expect that we would have possibility of in-person meetings with the community in August and September and also with the council again in October. That's really where the public participation push would begin, is as after that July meeting.
So we do have 2 open dates for workshops in the plan itself, and that's maybe in the event council can't make a decision or needs more time. along the way that'll give you some breathing room. So we try not to fill those 2 slots up, if you notice.
Kelly, on the one thing that I know council highly values, and that is making sure people have the ability to give input. And what do you anticipate a lot of public input on the draft or the land use map from individuals? And how do you think that's going to work using the Zoom platform? I know it calls for speculation, but I just kind of want to tease that out if you wouldn't mind, please.
Well, I think when I was looking at this, when we were doing workshops with the council, the scenarios topic obviously was a very large topic. And it was the only one that was really geared towards public comment and participation, and council even took extra steps to allow for that to happen. The other discussion of principles, they have really just been for the council's benefit of you being the audience and you working with your consultant to get an understanding and give direction to the consultant. In our eyes at this point, I think these next 3 workshops are really that consultant and planning team relationship with council. They're not directly a public input and soliciting public input to give us direction on a draft map. To us, we need to get to a complete document and let the public comment on that at some point, rather than each piece looking for public comment.
Maybe I misunderstood then. So on the 21st, we're going to discuss a draft land use map. On the 28th, council would be directing staff to proceed with a draft land use map then, is that right? Or is that a final decision?
So that's just like all these other decisions where you're giving somewhat of an okay to a component that'll go into a more detailed chapter that's going to come back to you as part of the draft plan. Even though you've seen land use principles, you haven't really seen the language that supports how those work in a land use chapter. So if you accept the map and the descriptions of the designations, they will then become part of that land use chapter that will come back to you in July as part of a complete draft.
And so we'll still, because it is on the 28th, it is a regular city council meeting, we will allow public input. Is that expected on that or not?
So it's the 28th was picked for 2 reasons. One, I have the other workshop for 321 State Avenue that can't happen any later than July 21st in our minds. We feel like we're going to get pressed to be able to get feedback from the council in the neighborhood to then turn around and get the RFP started and find the partner developer. So we've got my 21st workshop for that project. And then we use the 28th as a regular meeting for either one of 2 reasons. One, because the workshop wasn't available, or 2, you may ask for public input at that point in time. But it's a little odd because the 28th is when you're supposed to kick off the public input process, not necessarily say, is there any comments before we go out for comment?
Okay.
I know it's a little weird, but at some point we have to just say your comment period starts, let's say August 1st, and you have 2 months to participate with the city.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that, yes, there'll still be adequate time for people to give public input on this land use map then.
Yeah, I think so. And the way we laid this out, this is the quickest it could go. If council's not comfortable with these turnaround times, that's the kind of feedback that I need to hear tonight. And we can see where we can change dates. But there's no way we could do it any quicker than this. And this was trying to give you at least 1 to 2 extra weeks to get information, process it, and then if you need more time to turn around and give directions to that.
Council, what are your thoughts and input for Kelly on this item? Is everyone comfortable with this proposed schedule?
Mayor, I'm comfortable with this schedule.
Thank you, Gloria.
I'm happy to give it a try, and it'll be interesting to see how we all feel about it after our first substantial workshop on the topic.
Yes, yeah. And Kelly, David and Rachel, Steve and I met this afternoon, And Dave is on record as having some reservation, but I really appreciate his willingness to say, "Hey, let's give this a shot." But we also agreed that if we just feel it's just way too cumbersome, or just not getting what we feel is great discussion and the ability to really dialogue, we may reserve the right to revisit that. But I think I think the majority of the council really wants to try and move this thing forward. So if I might just suggest, Steve, that on the August 18th and November 17th, you have workshop to be determined. Maybe we could just put that as, reserved just in case we need that for the Ames 2040 plan. And then as we go through the process, then Kelly, if we need to, we can slip these other ones in to kind of keep us on schedule. How's that sound?
Yeah, makes sense.
I think, yeah, for us, and I told Steve this today, that the first 3 workshops, they're the only part that really feels relatively certain for me, because if you're not satisfied on June 16th with where we are, the rest of the schedule is not going to be how it works.
Okay.
So that's, June 16th is, yes, a couple of topics, but if there's not outstanding, if you haven't resolved all your outstanding issues, you can't really move forward finally.
Okay.
You'll use more time.
While hearing no other comments, I entertain a motion approving this proposed workshop schedule.
I have one other comment, Mayor.
Yes, please, Tim.
So when we had our budget meeting, the end of, I believe it was the end of the year, maybe it was the beginning of January, we had a substantial number of people from the arts community come and express an interest of getting more involved in the community and seeing the council make some time for input. I would not alter at all the schedule for the Ames 2040 plan. That has to be the driver. But I'm wondering if our council meetings are going to be shorter in length. Perhaps there's a way of wrapping up, an hour and a half time. Set that aside for the arts. We're not going to see them until September 15th. It seems like a long ways away.
So, Tim, were you suggesting that we try and do that while we're still using the Zoom platform, or are you saying once we resume in person, trying to get it slipped in that way?
I hadn't thought through that far enough, and one of the other role factors, candidly, has to be we don't know where we're going to be from a budget perspective. Mm-hmm. So they were coming to us hoping that we would be able to substantially increase our commitment. So at the very least, September 15th gives us a place to hear proposals in advance of the budget process. So I think that's good, but it just seems like it's a long ways away. And maybe there are things that we can do that are non-budget oriented that would be worth hearing as well. But anyway, maybe I'm fine just sort of sharing that. And if the staff sees a meeting that may not be very involved, maybe we could pull the discussion of the arts into that. I don't think it would be difficult to do.
I do know, Tim, that we met with, I forget the person's name, but he's the one, he's out there at Story County. He's the guy that does the, he's at Story County Theater. He runs the NBC satellite truck.
Mike Sulzberger.
Yeah. Brian, is it Brian? I'm sorry.
Mike.
Mike, Brian, Mike, and I met and had an outstanding conversation. And one of the things that he was talking about was he had a number of people that he was going to be lining up to come and participate in that. There was a person that leaked from, was it Extension, Brian? ISU Extension? There was 3 people.
Yes, Jennifer Drinkwater. She's a professor at Iowa State. I can't recall the others off the top of my head, though.
So it probably could not be something that would be just called on a whim in terms of just a week or 2 notice because people's schedule. I think we can duly note the fact that if we can move that workshop up maybe to August 18th, if we're going well on Ames 2040 plan, and I think Mr. Shanker is trying to avoid doing it in the summertime. plan to do it, in the fall. But I think it's there's a little bit of flexibility, I think, on this if we need to.
As I said, I think the budget's going to be a big driver. We don't really fully, and we won't know for a while the full implications of how the pandemic will affect our tax revenue and expenditures. So,
well, especially our sales tax.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to add something, Kelly, or not?
Nope, I just figured out what my conflict on my camera was.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion on the workshop schedule?
Move approval of the workshop schedule.
Betcher and Gloria. Amber seconded. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 40, hearing on 2020 pavement improvements middle school turnaround project. Does council have any questions for staff on this particular item? Hearing none, I declare the public hearing on the 2020 pavement improvements middle school turnaround project to be open. Brian, is there anybody who's indicated interest to offer comment on this particular item?
I do not see anyone, Mayor.
Okay, and we didn't receive anything written either. At least nothing emailed to council. Hearing none, declare the public hearing on the 2020 pavement improvement project to be closed. Entertain a motion approving resolution on approving final plan specifications and awarding the contract to Jensen Builders Limited of Des Moines, Iowa, in the amount of $139,700.
So move approval. I'll second that.
Corriere moves. Betcher seconded. Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 41, ordinances. Entertain motion on second reading of ordinance to change street name and speed limits for University Boulevard in the Bergeson annexation area. Roll call.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 42, entertain a motion on second reading of ordinance rezoning 207 South Teller Avenue from agricultural A to government airport district S-GA.
Move on second.
All right, Beatty Hansen,
Second.
second on Martin. Thank you. Roll call.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 43, entertain motion on second reading of ordinance on proposed zoning text amendment relating to high screen landscaping contained in section 29.4033F of the municipal code.
Move on second.
Betcher moved. Is there a second?
Second. Beatty Hansen.
Beatty Hansen second. Thank you. Roll call.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere, Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Thank you. Item 44, entertain a motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4408, increasing water rates by 2% and sewer rates by 5%, effective July 1st, 2020.
This is
Move on
Beatty
third.
Hansen. Move on to third.
Beatty Hansen moved.
Second.
Martin seconded. Thank you. Roll call.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, moving on to disposition of communications to council. There are 4 items. The first item is a letter from Ames Main Street on a request for a one-time payment in the amount of $21,922 for downtown beautification efforts. It's outlined in the FY 2020-2021 outside funding request. Any comments, Mr. Shanker?
No, I don't. Any direction from City Council on this?
Okay.
Mayor, it seems to me that this letter is similar to the sorts of requests that we're going to be considering from human service agencies and probably from other outside funders who may be requesting money. And I would like us to deal with this when we deal with the other requests that may come in so that we can see them as a set.
Right. Other input. Thank you, Gloria.
I think Gloria's right. I think we need to presume that we're going to be facing budget shortfalls. Yeah, at least that's what I would predict right now. So I certainly wouldn't want to make a decision like this in isolation.
Other input? Is the council desire to table the request or just decline the request and move on?
I think it would be more sensible to decline the request now just a comment that they could bring it up again if they wish. But I think given what we're expecting in terms of impact to the budget, the fact that we just went through an outside funding budget cycle where I believe something of this form was already considered, and that we're likely to have pressing needs from our asset agencies, it seems probably misleading to keep this in the collection of the other requests we're likely to get.
I don't know that I would agree with that, David, because I think we may see other outside funder requests as well. And so to me, it's a policy question of how we deal with all of those requests. And I do think that we could respond to the chamber now and perhaps suggest that if they wanted to do something or try to do something before we have that discussion, that they could revisit the current contract of the city, since I'm assuming there are going to be some events that they've already contracted for that may not be occurring because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it may be possible for them to consider shifting funds within the contract if they wanted to address this before we discussed the reallocation of funds as a package.
I guess I would see that more as a withdrawing of this request and a repackaging of it, with other considerations given our existing contracts. But yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion? Is there a motion from Gloria or from David?
Well, I would move that we put this request in with our discussion of human service agency funding and any other requests from outside funders that come in. And at this point, I'm not sure what that date would be. I think maybe we have the human services request coming up among these communications, and that may even be at our next meeting.
Deb's on. I think she's doing a survey right now. Can we have that survey back and ready to respond to council on the 28th, Deb?
Yes, the survey is out. We're expecting to have responses back by tomorrow, and then we need to go through the information with members of the asset admin team. The plan right now is to have that information before you with options at the April 28th meeting.
So I'm trying to think of the date for this motion. We don't know about other outside funder requests, though, right? We haven't heard anything from any other.
We have consulted with the other outside funding agencies to identify whether there are programs that they won't be able to complete or have had to cancel as a result of COVID. And the same thing with the Commission on the Arts contract. contracts for the current year. So we can provide all of that to you at the next regular city council meeting on the 28th.
So then I would move that the Main Street request be packaged with the other outside funder information and the human services requests for the April 28th meeting.
For a second.
Second.
Is that Corey?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Does everyone understand the motion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 2 item, we have an email from Norm and Vicky Marty regarding a request to initiate an Ames Urban Fringe Plan amendment. I trust you've all read through the email, understand the nature of that request.
I think you'll need a memo from the planning director on this, if you want to move ahead at all.
Is there a motion?
I would move for a memo.
Second.
Okay. Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried unanimously. Next, we have a memo from Kelly on revised response to request from Bishop Farms, Martin Marietta for a change to the Ames Urban Fringe Plan amendment.
Kelly's here. He laid out the memo for you. You're not, you're just being asked whether you want to have the staff and yourself invest time in moving ahead with the process itself. Kelly's given an indication what his thoughts are. If you want to move ahead, it's all you're doing is passing a motion to have them initiate the process. That's all you're doing. It will come back to you through the normal channels with all the public input, the right staff will work on it, and you'll make a final decision later if you want to proceed.
Is there a motion?
Kelly, you want to say something?
Do you have a time estimate on that, Kelly? Is that a lot of work or a minor amount of work, or?
I would consider it very minor, just because it's existing conditions. It's pretty obvious to people what's being proposed if they apply for it.
Is there a motion? I'd like to have a motion either way. For a memo or just declining the request.
Would we refer to staff for a memo?
No, you have the memo.
We have, yeah.
This is the memo.
Apologize.
It is whether to tell staff to allow the initiation of the amendment of the plan or not. Start the initiation. That's all.
I move that we start the initiation of the process.
Is there a second?
That's your second.
That's your second. Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? All right. And the last one is a memo from Deb regarding information from the asset agencies. Any comments, Deb or Steve, on this one?
No, I think Deb's kind of warning you what we're trying to position you for on the 28th. A lot of questions have come up about your funding. Are you going to continue the funding to these agencies for the rest of the year, even though they may not have been able to purchase services? You still want to support them with the amount of money that's budgeted. There may be one agency and maybe more that have actually, because of the COVID, remained open and had a greater need than the budget amount, and they may approach you for that. And the timing of this is important because they need to know how they're going to finish their budgets. But also, United Way is working on your last $125,000 for capital money. Remember that? They're going to make decisions at the end of April. So if for some reason you needed a substantial amount of money to finance the human service agencies above and beyond the adopted levels, that could be a source of some of the funding for that. You're all right. I will prepare a memo for you to show the shortfall in the budget for the remainder of the year. And I can assure you local option tax is going to be down significantly, along with a lot of other areas. So that's a source of revenue. If you need it, we could stop that process before it's given out at the end of April. And I don't think all of it would have to. There are some agents, not all agencies are going to qualify for it. It might just be a small share of that money. If you wanted to give more, than the allotted amount for this year. Some of them are just going to ask that you give them the amount you promised, not an additional amount, but realizing they weren't able to, they closed their doors, they did not actually perform the services you wanted to purchase. So that's just leading up, preparing you for the 28th meeting. Okay. All right, Deb, anything else you want to say?
Nope, you've covered it. Thank you.
Sorry, I stepped on you.
Oh, very good. All right, thank you. Go ahead for council comments. Gloria?
I am going to be participating in a conference call tomorrow with representatives from the International Town and Gown Association, the United States Conference of Mayors, the North American Counties Organization, and the ICMA as chair of the University Communities Council, because these organizations deal with college towns, and there is grave concern among college towns across the country about the impacts that the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic is having in our communities when so many students have left. And we're also concerned about the impact of an undercount for the 2020 census, although that pressure has been lessened somewhat by the change in, or we're hoping a change in the time that the count's going to occur. So these organizations are going to be discussing what sorts of strategies might be employed to lobby for additional funding in the next CARES package to assist cities, especially college communities that may be are seeing high percentages of their residents disappear for months at a time. And so that's kind of an unfolding story at this point. That's what I've got.
Thank you. Tim?
Okay, wanted to just say thank you to the staff. Really appreciate, I want to highlight the library and the Parks and Rec for, even though a lot of their operations have been closed down, they continue to look for innovative ways to deliver services, particularly now when people are not able to get out. And so I know the library's had a lot of online story time. Parks and Rec is doing things, delivering exercise classes over the internet. So we don't have a roadmap for this, and just out of their own creativity, finding ways to serve our community. So Steve, you've done well to train these guys. They're great services right now.
And they're good. Also, the police officers are reading, police department's reading stories too, if you know.
Yeah, it's great.
So everybody's pitching in.
Yeah, so love the creativity. Thank you.
Okay. Rachel?
Yeah, I just like to echo that and thank the staff for everything they've done. Even in the past few weeks, we've seen how much this situation can evolve. And I just like to say, as it's getting warmer out, I see a lot more people my age going outside. And I think if you're someone who's able, I'd really encourage you to stay home and do our part to wear masks and to keep everyone in our community safe. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Amber?
Just ditto what everyone said. Thank you to Steve and Deb and Brian and Mark and the rest of your department leaders and staff for everything you're doing to continue to serve the community.
Thank you. Bronwyn?
I just had one. It's sort of a follow-up from what I mentioned the prior meeting. I'd like to move for a memo from staff on what we could do to either utilize the current community gardens better or increase our community garden space.
Second.
Rachel seconded. All right. Any discussion?
Timeline. I was thinking, it's almost too late to get another garden plot in the ground for this year, but we could. So that my thought was, staff could give us some ideas on how we can maximize the utilization of what we currently got this year, And then also maybe in subsequent years, what we could do to improve it. That's my thought.
Okay. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Thank you. Anything else, Bronwyn?
That's all for me. Thanks.
David?
Hi, I'd like to talk about one of the items that was on our consent agenda that we didn't discuss otherwise. This is item 21. It was the signalized intersection traffic camera system. And this was actually a really cool sounding system to me. The idea is to have cameras suspended over intersections that get a fisheye lens view of everything that's happening at the intersection. And then that gets coupled to software that makes sort of real-time traffic decisions that will overall improve the traffic flow. So I think it's a neat system. And I had a conversation with our city manager, Steve Schenker, about this. And I want to make a couple things clear. First, I think we all know that it is not there for automated ticket writing for people who run through red lights. That's important. It's also not there in order to pick up video for like automated face recognition and do anything with that. It's really just there for the traffic, as I understand it. But even so, given that, it does record video, and in the test phase, I understand there's the potential that the video might be retained beyond the period that it's needed to make sort of instantaneous decisions about traffic. And this is something that I think as we roll new technology into the city, we have to be kind of careful about and just make sure that when we adopt a technology, it's used for reasons that we understand and doesn't sort of accidentally get used for reasons that we might not have thought of. So to that extent, I would like to move to ask staff to provide a memo describing the city's policy for video retention and how it would apply to this system.
Second.
Rachel, second. Thank you.
I'll mention also that I understand that the city is willing to make some of the data, maybe not the video data, I'm not sure, but some of the traffic data available for research purposes as well. I know the city does this frequently, and I think that's a great thing. But I am interested in making sure that we understand the privacy implications of the video that we're collecting properly and that we're making the right decisions about it.
Okay. Any other comments? Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Anything else, David?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Devin?
Nothing for me tonight that hasn't already been said. Just thank you so much, everybody. It was nice listening.
Thank you, Devin. Well, I'll just close by echoing what has already been said, and that is our staff is just outstanding, and the partnerships in the community and the communication is, I would say, second to none. And I'm just so impressed with the commitment that not only at the medical center, but Iowa State, school district, county, Story County Emergency Management. It's just it's heartwarming, and I shared this story a couple of times. I don't think I shared it with council, but we were at the Story County. We were at means Zoom meeting right now with the Story County Emergency Management last Thursday night, and Keith Morgan, who's a coordinator, indicated that they might need some help with transporting some food from the food bank down Des Moines to some food pantries. And within a minute, the mayor of Roland said he and his wife would take their SUV down and pick it up. And ISU, EOC stated, no, well, they have box trucks, and they might even have something with a refrigerated truck that they could go down and get it. And someone else shared that, well, there's a Jeep club in Story County. They're interested in, going down. And it's just that kind of a spirit of working together. And we meet every week via Zoom with the probably 25 participants, mayors from around the different Story County's communities, Story County supervisors, Iowa State, Dan Culhane has been a participant from a business standpoint. Chamber's did an amazing job trying to help shore up and encourage and strengthen the businesses, emergency management. But there is, I just want to assure not only all the residents, but also just to affirm publicly before council that people are really committed to working together. And I know it's really strengthened the bonds between all the different municipalities in Story County, because we talked about what happens if this goes down and how can we help you out. Oh, also the Story County Sheriff has also been very participatory and a real team player. So anyway, we have been very, very fortunate. I just checked before the meeting started. We're only at 11 COVID-19 cases in Story County as compared to the county to south of us, which is well over 100. I think it's close to 200. And I know the surge has not yet arrived, but I just trust and hope that we were able to dodge a major bullet and move forward. But and I think just to echo what Rachel said, and I would agree with you, there is not a shelter-in-place order, but we strongly encourage people to stay home. We know you have to go to work. We know you have to get groceries. You have to go out. You need to go outside and exercise. You got to mow your lawn. We understand that. But please, this social isolating is working. This physical distancing is working. And if we can break the back of the virus now, the faster we can try and start getting back to a new, different normal. But I just can't be prouder. I've been out and about just a couple of times driving around. And actually, by and large, there's very few large groups people are doing a good job of social distancing. But as it gets warmer, we got to keep that up. And so anyway, I'm just proudly associated with the city of Ames as well as Story County. There's a great sense of teamwork and it needs to continue. And also with Iowa State as well. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. And by the way, thanks to Brian and all the staff, IT, doing a great job. Thanks for getting this set up. I think it's worked out quite well this evening, and we still got probably a few things to get used to, but it is our temporary normal right now. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
All right, moved. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the week.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.